I got to get to Iran before we close. So there's been a lot of reporting, even when Donald Trump first took office, there was putting a lot of chum in the water. I'll say it that way, on this idea that Iran was looking for some kind of secret, special, fast way of creating a nuclear bomb.
Right.
Now, this goes against the fatwa. I think they call it a fatwa against nuclear weapons that was put out by the Ayatollah, effectively saying we don't need these. These are not something that we're looking for. And Iran has said for of decades we're not looking for a nuclear bomb. We have the technical proficiency to do it, but no, that is not something we're trying to do. And this is after people in Iran are pushing, saying we should be doing this. Israel has a nuclear weapon. Syria has collapsed. Hezbollah has been, if not decapitated, at the very least demolished or undercut severely. We can't continue in the way that we are continuing. We need to have an X factor, that X factor being a nuke. And again, the Iranian government still says, no, we're not doing it. The Ayatollah, no, we're not doing it. So
the CIA National Intelligence Estimate, no, they're not doing it.
Okay, so where is all this chum being dropped into the water? Where is that coming from then? Because all of the news and the reporting has been coming out from the perspective of the West. Again, it's anonymous sources, so you never know who these people are. I remember during the Iraq War where Dick Cheney would go out, give anonymous sources to the New York Times and then reference himself as if it was news, with no one knowing, him being the person who leaked and gave the information to the New York Times. So I'm always skeptical of this, the way that we do media. This source told us this. Okay, well, the government source clearly had a point of view that they want to get across, and they were able to get across anonymously and turn it into a story.
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? And, you know, is this one of those things where this is coming out of the Trump administration itself because they want to have a pressure policy against Iran?
Yes.
And should Iran be looking for the bomb? Meaning, has it been a mistake that they have not been more aggressive in regards to allowing Hezbollah to get decapitated, allowing the events that have been taking place in Gaza without necessarily having a strong response to it, considering they were going to be next. They were always going to be next. Give me your take on this, because the Middle East is in chaos right now.
It is. To answer your second question first, the Iranians have made some critical errors just over the last 6 months. I have used the word decapitated, just like you did a moment ago. Hezbollah has been decapitated. Hassan Nasrallah was killed, and 3 days later, the person who was replacing Hassan Nasrallah was killed. And not only has the leadership been decapitated, but that critical lifeline from Iran through Syria to Lebanon is gone. Al-Qaeda runs Syria now. So there is no more weapons pipeline between Iran and Lebanon. So, yeah, Hezbollah has made terrible, terrible mistakes. To answer your first question, I think all of this is coming from the Trump White House. You know, Donald Trump, we're talking on Tuesday the 11th. On Sunday the 9th, Donald Trump made a statement that he wants to engage the Iranians, and if they don't want to, he will, quote, bomb the hell out of them. No, he's not going to bomb the hell out of them. But this is what he does. You remember in J.R. McMaster's memoir, oh, this was just so great. In J.R. McMaster's memoir, he wrote that when he was Trump's national security advisor, Trump was talking one day about bombing North Korea and possibly about nuking North Korea. And McMaster said he was so appalled that they would even have this discussion that he said, he blurted out, you know how you could really make a name for yourself in history is if you engage the North Koreans, because the Democrats have never had the guts to engage the North Koreans. Well, that had never occurred to Trump. And so that was the first love letter. Remember the love letters that they exchanged? Yeah. That was the first love letter. Next thing you know, they're meeting in Singapore for the very first time. It was the first of 3 summits, and they're talking about a Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. I think we're seeing this repeat itself, but I think this is at Trump's insistence. You remember the old phrase that we all learned in our freshman year political science, or not political science, but international affairs classes, that only Nixon could go to China, right? well, maybe only Trump can go to Iran. And maybe that's what we're seeing here, where he's saying, I'm going to bomb them. I'm going to bomb the hell out of them. And thank God that we withdrew from the JCPOA. And then all of a sudden, they're meeting in Doha or they're meeting in Muscat. I think that's the bigger possibility here.
What does Trump want, if that's true? Like, there's all this talk about a Trump and Putin meeting that's supposed to take place. I was at the first Biden-Putin summit. I want to put that in.
I remember that.
That was an astonishing event. I was far too hopeful in that event. Mindy was very cynical. It's like, okay, whatever, we're just doing our job. We're here. he took none of it as real. His point of view was, this is all theater.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to come out of this. This is nonsense. And my point of view was, hey, these guys are sounding like one another. Meaning when Joe Biden came out, Joe Biden did his first 5 minutes of, Vladimir Putin's a horrible man and everything else. And then after that, what he was saying sounded very similar to what Putin was saying when Putin gave his press conference, gave his meeting. And I'm like, well, hey, they're having these back channel communications. At the very least, they seem to be saying a similar thing. Maybe something comes out of this. I was woefully naive. So fair enough. This time around, though, I'm hoping my naivety is not necessarily shown to be naivety and shown to be something that's a little bit more, let's say, solid in regard to this kind of international relations between the United States and Russia. I guess my take is, what do you think Trump wants out of any deal with Iran? They've gotten rid of the JCPOA, so it's not that. So
I think that's exactly what it is. I think that he wants essentially what the JCPOA called for without having Barack Obama's name on it. So the JCPOA, the most important parts of the JCPOA were international inspectors at Iranian nuclear sites and lead seals on the entrances of all of the Iranian nuclear sites. And that is exactly the same thing that we had through the United Nations on Iraq from 1991 to 2003, right? That's what the JCPOA called for. And it was working. It was actually working. What the United Nations does when they set up these international inspections regimes is they install hundreds of security cameras over every site, right? And then they put lead seals on all the door with the United Nations stamp on them, so you can tell if the door has been breached. The Iranians were abiding by the JCPOA, and in exchange, it opened up trade relations, mostly with Western Europe and Japan. We allowed the importation of carpets and pistachios and stupid stuff. The Iranians were far more interested in civilian airplane spare parts and spare parts to upgrade their refinery industry. But I think what Donald Trump would be happy with is the JCPOA not being called the JCPOA and being called, the Trump agreement or the Trump whatever. I think that's really what he's looking for.
I guess the last question, and it has to do with, how is Iran looking at the world right now?
Yeah.
And is it possible that part of what they're willing to accept is thinking, all right, we have a security agreement with Russia. We're going to get new fighters. We're going to get new armaments. We're going to get new missile defense, meaning it's going to take time, however, for us to get these things. But during the time, we are going to eat crow. Mm-hmm. And if we need to eat crow while we continue to get S-400s, while we get additional missiles, we are going to build up ourselves to be able to stand toe-to-toe with any of these players in this area. However, we can't do it now. And much of the power base that we have effectively used as our proxies have been eliminated. Mm-hmm. So we're in a rebuilding phase. And Pezeshkian just accepts it that way. Meaning, we took a far weaker stance than what we would have taken, but we needed to take that stance because we knew that we were going to have a security agreement, and we knew that it was going to take time for the security agreement to, let's say, pay off in the way that we needed to in regards to the defending and protecting Iran. That's the way I frame it, I guess, in my mind, as part of the rationale that the government of Iran has taken and being what I would call passive. Give me your take on this. How do you think they're viewing this? What is your lens? You've written the book on Iran, so you would know.
Oh yeah, I guess I did. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Pezeshkian is more popular abroad than he is in Iran right now. It's funny too. He was seen as a reformer. He's not a reformer. he's sort of a run-of-the-mill, right of center Iranian politician, and that's fine because his focus is, as it should be, on trying to build the Iranian economy. This relationship with Russia is very important because it's been in the works for more than 20 years. And finally, after 20 years, they've signed these agreements that will allow greater Russian involvement in Iranian defense. But the Iranians are at least as excited about the continued healthy trade relationships that they have with European countries. Remember, the JCPOA opened Iran to European trade. And this is kind of an interesting aside relative to the JCPOA. When Donald Trump pulled out of the JCPOA, U.S. law said that any country in the world that trades with Iran was now subject to U.S. sanctions. Well, we would have to sanction the UK, France, Germany, Japan. We're not going to do that just because we unilaterally pulled out of the JCPOA doesn't mean that everybody else in the world has to pull out of the JCPOA. And that's what they told us. They told us, forget it. And we just said, okay. And nothing has changed. So they're able to actually develop their economy, even if they have to do it through the Russians and the Chinese. They don't have any problem with that. I have 2 friends in Iran right now. And I talk to them almost every day. And they tell me that there's construction everywhere, that the economy is healthy. People have disposable income. One friend sent me a video the other night of people. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And the cafes are full and people are drinking coffee and they're eating dinner and they're talking to their friends and you can hear music in the background. That's Iran today. Our view of what Iran is not correct. It's not correct. It's a healthy, thriving economy. It's just that we're not participating in it. And one thing, too, that Americans have grossly underestimated is the import of Iran's new membership in BRICS.
Right.
There is going to be economic development in Iran. And because we are so pig-headed on our Iran policy, we're going to miss out on that.
Wow. Okay. So from your point of view, Iran's response is effectively biding time.
Yeah.
They're looking at this.
Time is on their side on this.
Do you think Israel is going to push Trump into an attack?
Oh, listen, from the moment that I walked into the CIA in January of 1990, literally every single time an Israeli prime minister came to Washington, the first thing out of his mouth was to beg us to bomb Iran. And nobody has been a worse offender than Benjamin Netanyahu. He screams it when he comes. Please bomb Iran. You have to bomb Iran. It's an existential threat. They're going to wipe us out. They have nukes. They have delivery systems. None of that's true. And at least we've had a string of presidents that have been able to hold him off. I'm not sure what Donald Trump's intentions are. And this might be what sort of begins to squeeze that zit from the bottom. And that is, do we bomb them into the Stone Age, or do we engage them and have, essentially Nixon go to China version 2?
Give me your prediction. Give me your prognostication. I want to put you on the record. Look, I like predictions, right? Like that gives you the political acumen of the person who's talking.
I think that we will. I think we will see a direct in-person meeting between Donald Trump and President Pezeshkian, and that nothing substantive will come of it.
Of the meeting.
Yeah. I think Trump wants so badly. I heard this from a friend of mine at the White House the other day. Trump is obsessed right now with winning the Nobel Peace Prize, right? This would be the crown jewel of his presidency, to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And he's not going to get any love from Kim Jong-un this time. But by God, he could work something out with Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. He could work something out with the Iranians. And if he worked something out with the Iranians, that would have a lasting impact.
Will King Abdullah capitulate to Trump's want to force the Palestinians from the West Bank into Jordan? And the same thing true for Egypt, by the way. Will Egypt capitulate? You don't think so?
Donald Trump yesterday threatened to cut off aid both to Egypt and Jordan if they don't accept all these Gaza Palestinians. Well, listen, 50% of the Jordanian population is Palestinian.
Right.
50%. In 1968, the Palestinian group Black September was fighting the Jordanian army literally on the steps of the palace to overthrow King Hussein and to take Jordan as the new Palestine. Okay? There's no love in Jordan for the Palestinians. They don't want one more Palestinian in their country. They don't want him. And the Egyptians are even more steadfast. They won't take any Palestinians, period. They have a population problem as it is. They can't feed their own people. There aren't enough jobs for them. They can't educate all these people. And what? They're going to take 1 million Palestinians and put them where? Yeah, a million for Jordan and 1 million for Egypt, and put them where? They're not going to do it. And there's no possible way that Donald Trump is going to cut off military aid to arguably our two closest Arab allies in the Middle East. Not a chance.
What stops him from doing so?
They'll collapse.
Oh, you mean the Egyptian government would just fundamentally collapse, and so would Jordan?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Does Israel care that Jordan or Egypt collapses? Isn't that just territory for them?
You know, the Israelis have been very bold recently about talking about something that they call Greater Israel. It's something that people will whisper about, but they don't actually come out and say it. Lately, they've been coming out and saying it, where Greater Israel, like biblical Israel, goes all the way to the border of Iraq, takes in all of Lebanon, takes the Sinai Peninsula. That's insane to me. Mm-hmm. And I think implementation of some sort of policy that would result in the creation of Greater Israel leads to nuclear war. I really believe it.
Really?
Yeah.
That extreme.
You can't displace tens of millions of people and just take their land. You know, what Donald Trump is talking about, forcing Palestinians out of Gaza, the word forcing being the operative term here, forcing them out of Gaza, taking their land and developing it and not allowing them the right of return. That is black and white. That is a black and white war crime.
Yes.
There's no argument about the analysis. That is a war crime. It's ethnic cleansing, and you can't do it. And so to do that, you know, times 5 or 10 to create a Greater Israel, the world won't stand for it.
Not so much. Yeah, not so much. We'll see. I hope you're right. I mean, I've watched the world stand for a genocide over the course of the last year. We shield for it. We've allowed Netanyahu to come into the country while it was taking place, give him all the accolades in the world. Hell, it was even given a speech to both members of Congress or both branches of Congress. So I don't know. I hope you're right. He seems to be going full-throated with this attempt of this kind of ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the West Bank. He seems to be doing it in both. People just been so focused on Gaza, they've ignored the fact of what Israel is doing in the West Bank. So we'll see. He is definitely trying, though. He is swinging for the rafters.
Yeah.
And he's trying to use this kind of humanitarian argument in order to justify it. John, man, I always love talking to you, man.
Good to talk to you, Jamal.
Absolutely. John Kiriakou, former CIA operative. You can catch him and whistleblower. Definitely check John out on his Substack account. Definitely check him out on Twitter, and definitely check out his engagements that are going to take place over the next year. Thank you, my man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Have a good one, John. Be safe.